Ever wondered how the cost of living is calculated? It's a question that might seem daunting, but it's actually integral to our everyday lives. You see, the cost of living isn't just about how much you pay for a loaf of bread or a gallon of gas. It's about understanding how much it costs for us to maintain our standard of living. It's about that cup of coffee you buy every morning, the rent or mortgage you pay every month, and even the cost of that new book you've been dying to read. This concept is so important because it influences a multitude of economic decisions, from personal budgeting to business investments. It even shapes government policies and determines the direction of our economy. So, you see, the cost of living is not just a number, it's a reflection of our economic life. The magic behind this calculation is something known as the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. So, what exactly is this Consumer Price Index, or CPI, you may ask? Well, let's pull back the curtain. The Consumer Price Index, or CPI as it's commonly known, is a rather important tool that measures the average change over time in the prices paid by urban consumers for a market basket of goods and services. Think of it as a yardstick, a way to gauge how much the cost of this market basket changes over a certain period. This basket isn't something you'd find at your local grocery store, mind you. It's a metaphorical basket, a collection of goods and services that an average urban consumer might buy. Everything from a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk to a haircut or a movie ticket could be in this basket. Now, it's important to note that the CPI isn't calculated by simply adding up the prices of all the items in the basket. Instead, it's a bit more nuanced than that. The CPI is calculated by taking price changes for each individual item in the basket and averaging them. Imagine it this way. If the price of bread goes up by 5%, but the price of milk stays the same, the CPI takes into account both of these changes. It's like a weighted average where each item in the basket carries a certain importance or weight. So even if the price of one item skyrockets, it won't necessarily cause a massive increase in the overall CPI if its weight in the basket is small. In essence, the CPI is a reflection of our living costs. It tells us if we're paying more or less for the same goods and services compared to previous periods. It's a thermometer for the economy in a way, letting us know if prices are heating up or cooling down. Now, you might be wondering, what's in this basket of goods? Well, hold that thought, as we'll dive deep into that in our next scene. Stay tuned. The basket of goods isn't your typical grocery basket. It's a metaphorical basket, brimming not just with groceries, but with a diverse range of products and services. Imagine everything you purchase or pay for in your daily life. It could be the breakfast cereal you had this morning, the shirt you're wearing right now, the rent you pay for your apartment, or even the haircut you got last weekend. All these essentials and more find a place in this unique basket. But why this peculiar assortment of items, you may ask? Well, the basket of goods is designed to represent the spending habits of the average consumer. It's a snapshot of our daily consumption pattern, a mirror reflecting our living standards, and an indicator of our economic well-being. Now let's delve a bit deeper. The items in the basket are not picked at random. They are carefully selected based on their importance in our day-to-day lives. For instance, the food we eat every day holds a significant place, as does the clothing we wear. Similarly, the rent we pay for our housing and the money we spend on transportation, education, healthcare, and entertainment all contribute to the composition of this basket. It's important to note that this basket is not fixed. It's dynamic, changing with time and evolving with our lifestyles. As new goods and services become popular, they might be added to the basket. Conversely, items that fall out of favor or become obsolete are removed. This ensures that the basket of goods remains a true representation of our current consumption habits. In essence, the basket of goods is a microcosm of our economic lives, a tangible representation of our collective consumption. It's the cornerstone of understanding how the cost of living changes over time, and a vital tool in measuring the Consumer Price Index. So, we've got our basket, but how do we calculate the changes in the cost of these items? Well, that's where things get interesting, and we'll explore that in the next segment. Stay tuned. Calculating the Consumer Price Index isn't as complicated as it sounds. Now let's unravel the mystery behind the calculation of this economic indicator. The process begins with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS for short, which plays the crucial role of gathering data on the prices of thousands of goods and services across the country. They do this by visiting or calling various types of establishments. Think supermarkets, doctors' offices, apartment rental companies, and even barber shops to get the most current prices of the items. For each item in the basket of goods, the BLS records the current price and compares it to the price of the same item in previous periods. This comparison gives us a clear picture of how the cost of each item has changed over time. Now you might be wondering, how does the BLS decide what goes into this basket of goods? Well, the selection is based on the spending habits of urban consumers and wage earners, which are surveyed every few years. The goal here is to ensure that the basket reflects the goods and services that average Americans are actually buying. Once all the price information is collected and the price changes have been calculated for each item, the BLS combines them using a specific formula. This formula takes into account the relative importance of the items in the average consumer's budget. For example, housing costs usually make up a larger portion of people's expenses, so they carry more weight in the CPI calculation. This process results in a single number, the CPI. If the CPI rises, it means that on average, prices have increased. If it falls, prices have generally decreased. However, it's important to remember that the CPI doesn't reflect the price change of every single item. Some prices may increase more than others, some may decrease, and some may stay the same. So there you have it. That's how the CPI is calculated. It's a tool that helps us understand the direction of price changes and the rate of inflation in the economy. But remember, the CPI is more than just a measure of inflation. It's a snapshot of our economy, providing invaluable insights into our cost of living and financial health. The CPI has a far-reaching impact on the economy. Let's delve into understanding its significance. The Consumer Price Index, or CPI, serves as an economic compass, guiding decisions and policies at various levels. It's like the North Star for economists, government officials, business leaders, and even labor unions. Now, how does this work? Let's think of CPI as a thermometer measuring the economic health of a nation. When the CPI rises, it signals inflation, indicating that prices are heating up. On the other hand, a falling CPI suggests deflation, hinting that the economy might be cooling down too much. This information is vital for policymakers. They utilize these CPI readings to adjust economic policies, aiming to keep the economy balanced, not too hot, not too cold, but just right. For instance, central banks may change interest rates based on CPI data to control inflation or stimulate growth. Businesses, too, keep a close eye on CPI. It helps them plan their strategies, from pricing their products to managing their costs. A higher CPI might prompt companies to raise their prices, while a lower one might encourage them to invest and expand. Let's not forget about the workers. Many wage contracts have clauses tied to CPI designed to protect workers' purchasing power. If the CPI goes up, wages may increase in line to help workers keep up with the cost of living. So you see, the CPI is not just a statistic. It's a powerful tool that influences economic decisions at a grand scale. From the corridors of power in government to the boardrooms of corporations and to the negotiation tables of labor unions, the CPI is a constant presence. It's this humble index, tracking the price of your bread, milk, and coffee, that helps steer the economic ship, trying to keep it on a steady course amidst the turbulent waves of the global economy. So the next time you hear about the CPI, you'll know exactly what it means and why it matters. So, let's quickly recap what we've learned about the CPI. We embarked on a journey, starting with understanding the cost of living, moving on to unveiling the intricacies of the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. We delved into the basket of goods, explaining how everyday items we purchase form the backbone of this index. Then we learned about the calculation of CPI, a process that might seem complex, but is essentially the heartbeat of our economy. We also discussed the critical role CPI plays in shaping the economy, influencing everything from our personal finance decisions to broader economic policies. It's essential to remember that the CPI isn't just a collection of numbers or percentages. It's a dynamic tool that helps us gauge the health of our economy and, by extension, our standard of living. It's a reflection of our financial reality. Remember, the CPI isn't just a number, it's a reflection of our economy's health and our standard of living. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.